Good morning, everyone. My name is Rebeca Biancardi from CMCC, and I am from, I am from the ISCD division, which is the Information System for Climate Science and Decision Making. And today we'll be looking at climate governance platforms, a springboard for transformational adaptation through informed decision making. This is part of TransformAr project, and we will have several speakers joining us today from TransformAr and also sister projects. This webinar is part of a larger network that we are developing through TransformAr, and that is the Climate Change Adaptation Network, which we envision to become a space that facilitates collaboration and knowledge exchange between adaptation experts and local stakeholders in order to find and to address transformative solutions in Europe and beyond. Here you have a small graph of how we envision this network to be and what role to play within the EU mission adaptation and the sister projects. We will be looking today at, we will have a quick introduction from our project coordinator, Jan Koels, and he will introduce the project. That will be followed by Beatrice Meyer from the MIP for ADAPT platform, and she will show us how they also support regional areas. And then a presentation by my colleague and Deputy Director, Chiara Trozzo, on adaptation governance in Europe. We will then dive into the case studies and the interactive session. We will look first at the Resilience Index, and that is the Galicia case study by Andrea, Ogando, Vidal. And then from Manuela, Puddu from Medsi, we will look at the case study of Oristano in Sardinia, Italy. Then we will discuss these case studies deeper into breakout rooms. So each of you will have the possibility of choosing which governance solution interests you the most, and then discuss it further. And you will have also the opportunity to ask directly to the case study leaders how they developed the solution and how it could be potentially replicated in other areas. We will then all come back to the plenary room and quickly discuss the results from the two breakout rooms. And then finally, we will have, we have the honor to have also our project, our sister projects. We have IMPETUS with Martine Rottink and Teresa Geidel from REGILIENCE. And then we will close off the sessions. And if you have questions, you'll be able to the sister projects, you'll be able to ask then. Just some very brief housekeeping rules. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that the recordings will be available at a later stage. There are lots of you, so please keep your microphones off unless you're speaking throughout the whole webinar. Please post all the questions that you have in the chat. The chat window is at the bottom center of the screen, and speakers will slowly try to answer to your questions, and if not, at the end of the webinar, we'll try to connect the questions and the speakers in a second phase. And then once a final rule is to please, once we enter the breakout rooms, to turn on your cameras. With this, that's all for me. Jan, you have the floor, and let's begin.
Thank you, Rebecca. So, and I'm happy that we have now this first webinar of our network on climate change adaptation. And that we started as a TransformAr initiative, right? So TransformAr is a Green Deal Horizon project, and it's basically on accelerating transformational adaptation, and it fits in the adaptation mission. So TransformAr is one of the pilots or the flagships that supports like how could we bring the adaptation mission into practice. So we have a lot of demonstrations that take place in the project. So governance solutions are one of the solutions. So we have here in this project, in this webinar, I mean, two governance solutions we want to share with you from Galicia and from Sardinia. So they will be presented later on. And that's, I guess, for me now, a very short introduction, but I'll leave the floor to the others to provide more info.
Thank you very much, Jan. Indeed, let's move straight on to our next speaker, and that's Beatriz from Mission Adaptation.
Hello, everyone. Sharing my screen now. So just checking that you can see the right screen.
There's some sort of error message on your
Okay, so that's
screen.
not the right screen then.
I think you might be sharing the whole screen rather than the window. Yes, that's perfect.
Apologies for that. So, hello, I'm Beatriz Mayor. I am representing the MIP4ADAPT, which is the mission implementation platform supporting the implementation of the mission on climate adaptation. So, trying to the slide now. Okay, so the mission implementation platform supports the European regional and local authorities to prepare and plan their adaptation pathways to climate resilience by using their existing climate vulnerability and risk assessment to develop your climate adaptation plans, by identifying appropriate climate adaptation demonstration projects and financial support for implementing them, and to stimulate stakeholder engagement and citizen engagement to mobilize them in an inclusive approaches to climate adaptation. The support that MIP4ADAPT offers to the mission charter signatories, which are the regions that signed the charter and joined the mission 2 years ago, is some technical assistance on climate adaptation pathways, technical assistance on supporting access to funding for adaptation projects, technical assistance on citizen engagement, and networking opportunities with similar regions to share experience, etc., through our community of practice. Also, for those regions who are not charter signatories, there are resources available through the mission portal, where you can find knowledge and data that you can access, communications support. There is a newsletter that you can all sign to. And there will be open events and workshops open for the whole community, and access to mission solutions. And MIP4ADAPT also has the role to coordinate the mission projects, among which TransformAr is one of the first mission projects. And this is done through the community of practice, where there are several gatherings open to all projects to exchange. There is also, for the regions more specifically, technical advice that is coordinated with the technical support that these other projects provide as well. Again, there are communications open to everyone, and there is a monitoring and evaluation done both at the regional level and also at the mission project level. And in terms of technical assistance, just to update on our offer and updates and targets, We have technical assistance support on 3 aspects. First one, supporting the adaptation planning to help regions move from step 2, the vulnerability and risk assessment, to step 6, which is monitoring. And we have a target of 200 regions supported by at the end of 2025. On type 2, we have support on financing to help you identify the appropriate demonstration projects and access relevant funding and financing opportunities. Again, we aim to support 200 regions on this and 50 projects in total. And on type 3 is support on stakeholder and citizen engagement to stimulate how to engage them in your climate adaptation planning, plus supporting a total of 90 community level events by the end of 2025. So you are all very welcome to for charter signatories to apply to the technical assistance, and for all the other regions to check our resources on the mission portal. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for staying within the time frame. With this, let's move to our next speaker, Chiara Trozzo.
Thank you, Rebeca. Good morning to everybody. Let's share the screen. Okay. So, good morning to everybody. I'm Chiara Trozzo, working at CMCC Foundation, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Research Division Information System for Climate Science and Decision Making. We are mainly the CMCC interface between science and policy, dealing with adaptation, planning and policy elaboration, and also stakeholder engagement. But today I will provide you a brief overview of the status and recent research on adaptation governance in Europe. So let's start with try to define what adaptation governance is. It entails collective efforts of different actors in the society to address the problem, and also at the same time exploit the benefits and opportunity associated with the impacts of climate change. Key elements are the creation of institutions, rules, and organization, and then the selection of normative principles to guide the proven solution and institution building. Here on the right, you can see an example on governance framework for ecosystem-based adaptation. So you can find all the different types of actors and institutions involved with distinct roles, mandates, and responsibility. But just to deep dive a little bit more into the latest research on adaptation governance at European level, I'm glad to present you the results of the work that we have carried out in the framework of the European Topic Center on Climate Change Adaptation, that at CMCC and with my colleague Giulia Galluccio, who is also with us in this webinar, we are coordinating. The European Topic Center on Climate Change Adaptation, also known as ATCCA, is a consortium of 18 organizations with expertise in the topic of climate change adaptation and LULUCF, and it is an initiative funded by the European Environmental Agency. We basically provide assistance in the development and production of the required knowledge base in terms of technical assessment and reports, indicator updates, technical analysis to support the implementation and developments of the European legislation and policy, mainly related to climate change adaptation and LULUCF, such as the Green Deal and the European Climate Adaptation Strategy. Here, like a brief snapshot of our different products, you can find all these products, and then I will put all the links in the chat in the ATCCA webpage in the EEA website. So, but today, and I will focus on the two products that you can see highlighted here in the slide in red. the ATC paper on called Europe on Track with Climate Resilience, which feeds the related briefing. These two documents are based on the analysis carried out with of the data provided by the member states in the framework of their adaptation reporting activities in compliance with the regulation on the governance of the energy union and climate action. The analysis covered different topics from climate risk assessment, adaptation priorities, monitoring and evaluation system, but also for the sake of the time, I will just focus and present the main results and key messages related to adaptation governance at European level. So what we found out: mechanisms for horizontal policy integration and multi-level coordination are now in place in the majority of countries. They are mainly based on soft collaboration-based forms of governance, but nevertheless, legal requirement to enforce horizontal policy integration and binding vertical governance framework are increasing. We also found out that these sort of networks and collaborative mechanisms are crucial and key elements to boost and foster the implementation of adaptation strategy plans and action at local level. So supporting different kind of stakeholders and obviously subnational governance through different kind of activities, from capacity building, information provision, guidance, and also financing schemes. So just to conclude, even though well-developed and governance framework are in place at European level, and there you can see on the right a map on the territories that are signatories of the initiative of the Covenant of Major, that can be considered one of the main initiative on adaptation governance at Europe involving local territories. There are still some challenges. They are mainly related to difficulties in coordination, mainly due to a limitation in financial, technical, and human capacities. And that's it from my side, and then happy to answer your question on this later.
Thank you very much, Chiara. It was a great sum up of the recent and most important governance in Europe. We will now move on to the case studies, and we will start with University of Vigo with Andrea Ogando Vidal, which will introduce and explain the TransformAr Resilience Index. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebeca. Good morning, everyone. Let me share my presentation. Yes, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Andrea Ogando from the University of Vigo, from the REDER Research Group. And well, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to here to present you the Operational Resilience Index that we are developing to adapt the value chains to climate change. So, well, this is the outline that I will be following during my presentation. I will introduce you to the Galicia case study in TransformAr project. We will explore what the Resilience Index is, how it's developed, and the practical utility it provides for policymakers and stakeholders. So, regarding to the Galicia case study in TransformAr, let me introduce you briefly to the Galicia region, located in the northwest of Spain, known for its coastal inlets known as rias, with favorable conditions for mussel aquaculture in hanging ropes. In particular, Ria da Arousa is the largest and the most productive, with 70% of the mussel traps. And well, the Galician inlets are not an exception, also face climate vulnerabilities that pose threats to the productive sector and regional stability. So to adapt to this scenario, we are developing two solutions in the mussel aquaculture. On one side, TransformAr monitors climatic variables in real time for mussel drafts. And in the other side, we at the University of Vigo are developing the operational resilience index to guide strategic decisions to prevent interruptions in productive operations. So, what is exactly this operational resilience index? Let's see. We know that some climatic and meteorological elements are changing their trends, posing risk of interruption to the operations of multiple value chains. And at its essence, the resilience index is a mathematical model that provides an exhaustive assessment about the adaptation capacity of the operative processes to the effects of climate change. It does not focus on a specific aspect, but rather assess in a comprehensive manner how effectively a system can manage the challenges posed by climate change. Let's say that it serves like a health check for adaptation capacity, considering risk scenarios, resilient factors, and within a productive process. So let's see now how the resilience index is developed and how its scores are calculated. So the development process of the resilience index follows this workflow. I'm going to analyze it quickly, step by step. First of all, through literature review, we have identified the phases of the operational process of the mussel production, from the seed collection to the deposition of the product. And on top of that, through collaborative work from Spanish Council of Research, the SIC, and the Technology Center of the Sea, TEDMAR, we have identified 7 climatic and meteorological variables with the highest impact over processes. And historical data and 2050 projections have also defined. All this information was afterwards validated by experts. So in a second stage, to define the priority risk scenarios that emerge from the interaction between climatic meteorological elements over productive processes, we launched a consultation dynamic in which 23 agents have participated. These stakeholders have knowledge and expertise related to mussel aquaculture, climate change, and resilience. Furthermore, to avoid bias in the answers, the quintuple helix has been represented in the expert panel encompassing administration, academia, productive sector, environmental organizations, and society. To make this consultation, we developed a questionnaire with a matrix structure, similar to this that you see in the slide. The matrix confronted the climate projections and the operational processes identified in the previous stage. And the 23 experts were asked to rate on a scale the impact of each climate variable on the phases of the process by answering this matrix 3 times. They reviewed the previous anonymized results between rounds and adjusted the answers considering the response statistics. The results show us that it was a growth in the consensus from the first round to the third. The result of this dynamic was the identification of priority risk scenarios represented in this figure. According to the experts, the increase in acidification overall, but also the increase in ocean surface temperature, air temperature, and wind are the variables that could cause the most significant impact on the operations of the production processes. In addition, 7 of the 10 processes identified could be significantly affected. After that, in the next step, the resilient factors were identified. That is, what management tools are available to moderate the effect of possible risk scenarios. As we have done previously, these 20 resilience factors, classified into 4 main dimensions, were identified through literature review and subsequently validated by the sector's experts. Following the same methodology as in Delphi 1, we have developed a second consultation to experts, Delphi 2. And for this Delphi 2, a new questionnaire with a matrix structure was also created. This matrix relates the resilient factors in the rows, classified by dimensions, with the 13 priority risk scenarios in the columns. The experts had to give a score on a scale of the level of contribution of each resilient factor to moderate its risk scenario. Thanks to this consultation process, we will identify the resilient gaps that will be our model variables. We are currently working on this last phase, analyzing data obtained in Delphi 2, and preparing also the final assessment questionnaire that to evaluate the sector's adaptive capacities. That is, the sector's performance in each of the resilience factors relevant to adaptation. Its results will feed our model with values for the final calculation. So moving forward with the process a little bit, because as I said, we are still working on it, let's see an example of how what we will obtain. Once the results have been transferred to the model, we will obtain a synthetic index that expresses the existing margin for improvement, multiplying the weight given by experts to the resilient factors and the scores of the capability assessment questionnaire. In this example, the sector shows a total score of 518 resilient points out of 1,000. So finally, to represent the insights obtained with the calculation of the synthetic resilient index, a dashboard like this will be designed. The figures are fictitious, just to show you more or less how it will look. This dashboard doesn't only display the overall margin for improvement, but also the margin for improvement in each of the 5 dimensions of resilient factors. That is the first box on the left. And this tool precisely pinpoints where efforts for adaptive capacity are most efficient, offering valuable information for improvement proposals. For example, in the governance block, focusing on training programs and flexible management is crucial. We opted for a synthetic index for its comprehensiveness, simplifying complex information into accessible metrics. So, having understood, I hope, what the resilient index is, let's explore its real-world impact and its applicability. So, in essence, the resilient index extends beyond theory, serving as a practical tool with significant implications for stakeholders across different sectors. It guides decision makers through complex decision-making processes with a detailed breakdown for its interpretation. It offers a mechanism for recognizing overall resilience, pinpointing critical areas for adaptation and improvement. It establishes strategic connections between risks and vulnerabilities, directing efforts where they matter most. Fosters stakeholders' engagement, involving key actors in the decision-making process. The Resilience Index also goes beyond industry concerns. It helps to safeguard vital economy activity for local economies. And its versatility allows its transfer to other sectors and regions, ensuring its applicability beyond its original context. So about the latest, in fact, we have developed this methodology for a previous case study for a port of Punta Langosteira in Galicia. In this QR, you can access the paper published in Marine Policy. This paper was quoted also in the 6th assessment report from the second working group of the IPCC. And as you have seen, we are applying this methodology now to the mussel aquaculture value chain. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Let's move to the next presentation. Manuela, I'll leave the floor to you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Manuela Puddu from the Med-C Foundation. I'm the coordinator of the climate unit of the foundation, and I will present today our governance solution that has been developed. Okay, it's not working. Okay, it's being developed to manage territory, a dense territory and a complex system of river and wetlands. We are in the western side of Sardinia in Italy, and as you can see in the map, we have like many wetlands, many protected areas within really a small territory. We have 6 Ramsar sites, which represented 18% of the all Ramsar sites in Italy, and we have 19 Natura 2000 sites, which overlap the other protection areas, and we have 11 municipalities along this territory. It's really an important site. It's considered like a biodiversity hotspot for, especially for water birds, but also for the presence of priority habitats. And we are really different landscapes. We have wetlands that are just temporary, other are permanent. We have ponds, lagoons, so we have condition of freshwater and brackish waters. And we have natural areas and really artificialized ones. So really a complex system. And wetlands represent really like an identity value for the culture of all the community there, because it's really like a waterland. And so, also economic activities really are related to wetlands. So we have really fishing, aquaculture, but also handicraft is based on that, ecotourism activities. So really wetlands are, deep involved in the community life. We started to work on this area thanks to some private funds. And doing a deep analysis, what we discovered is like this area is really impacted by climate forcing, such as storms and extreme precipitation, high temperature during summer times, and long dry periods that are causing hazards such as coastal erosion, coastal and inland flooding, especially saltwater intrusion. And all these change of conditions are affecting biodiversity and habitats, with really loss of it, and the increase of invasive and alien species. These environmental problems are not only related to changes on climate conditions, but also on direct pressure due to human activities, especially intensive agriculture and livestock, aquaculture, pollution due to mining activities and coastal development. And but that's not the only problem of the area, but like a strong problems that we have identified was the really difficult of having an integrated governance of this area. Because as happened with all water bodies, they don't really are located in just one municipality, but it's cross municipality borders. So we have many public authorities that involved, and in Italy, but it happens in many other countries in Europe. We don't have like a unique body that manages wetlands, but it's spread in different sectors. So we really have problems because the competencies are divided among different authorities. And this lack of collaboration between sectors also appears in the lack of collaboration between private and public sectors. So how to deal with all this, knowing that wetlands plays really an important role on climate protection, as really they can be a nature-based solution containing water flooding, and also absorbing CO2 and so on. So how really to reach in integrating an efficient management of this ecosystem. Looking at the legal framework from international to local policies, all they identifies the model of river contracts as like a tool to really manage all the economic interests and public utilities to manage this system. So from one side, there was this need to have an integrated approach, and an approach that was, as open as possible, involving all the communities. And from the other side, we have the strategies on climate change adaptation from European, national, and local level. And in particular, the regional adaptation strategy to climate change in Sardinia really suggests to use specific policies and develop specific policies for the integrated management of water in partnership with private stakeholders to reduce the environmental risk. So it really puts together all the topics. So we decided after all this analysis that developing a contract, a wetland contract, would be, the best solution to really reach an integrated and sustainable management of the wetland system of Oristano. So we put together the stakeholders to, first of all, facilitate the cross-sectoral cooperation and overcome the fragmentation in governance at local level. So all together with a clear objective that was to mitigate the negative impacts of human activities, enhance water quality and circulation, and increase resilience to climate change. So this wetland coastal contract, it can be summarized in 4 aspects. It's like a voluntary entry, so no one is forced to participate in it. People participate because they believe in that goal, believe in the importance of collaboration. It's open, so it's not just public, but it's public and private sector together, and the broad community. Is based on negotiated decision, because all members are called to collaborate actively in the formulation and implementation of this joint decision. So let's work together to reach that final goal. And people are really committed, so they sign a formal act, so they are committed to reach to collaborate together to reach the final goal. Here are the steps we have followed for building the contract. So first it was this deep analysis phase when we started to analyze the regulatory framework at local level. We mapped all the stakeholders, and we really did a deep analysis on the environmental, social, and economic aspects of the area. And once we identified, the problems that we wanted to solve with this contract, partners were invited to sign a memorandum of understanding with really these goals clear in mind and the role that everyone could play on it. And then we really started this participative phase where we put together around the table, all the different actors, and we try working with, future and medium-term scenario, including and considering climate change impacts. We really try to define how and what we want to do, who could do what, and with what money. So we really, it was like a negotiated phase, because everyone, big or small, put it on the table in their own interests. And the idea was really try to go further and not stay on your single problems, but understand that maybe your problem is similar to another one, that your solution could, help also other areas, or that maybe are territories that have same problems, but the solution they have identified are different, and sometimes they crash with each other. So there were problems are really implementing activities because of this really not connection. So we really worked a lot on this, and we finally end up with an action plan. And once this was completed, the partners really committed to the contract. We started.
I will have to ask you to keep
speed
track.
up.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We had two phases. The first one was that really people who signed the contract were basically public authorities. And now, so we have 11 municipalities, water bodies, and regional government. And now with TransformAr, we are working to enlarge and involve more the private sector and the whole community through really many participatory events. Okay, these are the governance structure, but I will just skip it. The action plan foreseen 50 actions. Some affects all the territory, some are more site specific, and these are the, let's say, the strategic axis of the action plan. So all the activities are grouped on these topics. Within one of the activities that it's really important that we're developing now within TransformAr is this local wetland observatory, which is really a tool for monitoring the condition of wetlands and providing data for conservation and sustainable usage. So from one side, having this scientific approach, it's important because it's support and influence decision making from one side. And from the other, helps to have an active involvement of local stakeholders, because we are talking with real data, so they are more involved to be part of this process. And in the same times, this scientific approach is also helping to raise awareness on the communities, because we show really the situation and trends and the effects of this measure. Well, just to recap, just one word, we will having our experience on coastal contract shared through the mission stories of the adaptation to climate change mission of the European Commission, and it's now like under revision. So we hope that by the end of December we'll be able to share with all of you. And the idea is really being inspiring, and having this as a good practice that can be replicated in other contexts similar to ours, or when the water bodies that really need to be managed to reach a good sustainable management. I'm done.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So we'll quickly jump to the breakout session. Down below you have 3 dots. There is where you can find the breakout rooms if it's not in the main dashboard, and then you'll be able to choose which breakout room you want to go in. So we have just seen 2 case studies. The one of Galicia showed us the application of data-driven decision making to manage mussel culture. And in the case of Sardinia, instead, we saw how in the Gulf of Oristano, they developed coastal contracts and the local wetland observatory. So based on these 2 presentations, please feel free to choose the one that you think could be maybe replicable to your area, or that you would be interested in asking a few questions more. We will have 20 minutes. And then we will come back all to the plenary room and briefly discuss the main results from the discussion. In the breakout rooms, the discussion will be guided through a Mentimeter, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. Please turn on your cameras and unmute yourself. See you in a little bit. And we will start with Galicia. Axel, if you can come in and quickly tell us the main results from your discussion.
To be very brief, I think we had an interesting view on the replicability of the resilience index, and definitely some enthusiasm of the participants to replicate this solution in different regions in and outside of Europe. but also different political, economic, social constraints that might make it difficult to replicate the solution. Another thing that stood out was the fact that there are quite little governance tools known or available to the participants at this moment. So I think it only shows the value of the Resilience Index as a tool to support decision making. So those were more or less some key takeaways from our breakout room.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And in our breakout room, maybe we'll be able to share the Mentimeter results with you afterwards. But what really showed up, well, demonstrated that there is an interest, but there is a fear in the applicability of the solution, especially due to the complex system. Interestingly, it was also demonstrated that, for example, in the Oristano case study, public authorities were more willing in a way than the private sector, but of course this would depend on the situations. And in the Oristano case, it was done during COVID, so that might have affected it as well. So I wouldn't want to take more time to the other presentations, so we can now move to our next speaker, and that will be Martine Rottink from IMPETUS.
Yes, thank you. All right, I will share my screen. Thank you. My name is Martine Rottink, and I'm working within the IMPETUS project, as Rebeca already introduced. I work for a Dutch company called Nelen-Schuurmans, which is possibly impossible to pronounce by everybody who's not Dutch. But we are a water and IT company located in the Netherlands. You can see our location here on the slide. Our company exists for about 25 years, and we have about 75 employees. And as I said, we are focusing on water management and climate adaptation. And we combine our domain knowledge in the water sector with technology development. Very shortly introduction on the IMPETUS project. The main goal of the IMPETUS project is to accelerate climate actions. And within the IMPETUS project, we have 7 different demo sites, scattered over Europe, where we in each demo site focus on different climate risks that are most relevant to that specific region. I'm involved in the Atlantic demo site, which is the blue area indicated in the map. Our demo site is in the Netherlands, and we focus mostly on flood risks and also heat stress. Heat stress is becoming more and more relevant in the Netherlands. It's not like in the southern part of Europe, I think, but yeah, for Dutch standards, it's becoming more and more of a challenge. I only have 10 minutes now, so I won't go into both topics, but I will tell you a bit more on what we're doing on flood risk. Because as we really believe that water management is for a large part also information management. So more and more data is becoming available now. Also satellite data or measurements, like in every field almost. And we really believe that if we can use this information properly, it will really help you to make better decisions on how you should manage your water system. Also looking into challenges that we expect in the future under the pressure of climate change. Within Nelen-Schuurmans, we developed our own hydrodynamic simulation software. It's called 3DI. We developed this about 15 years ago. And this model really uses, is totally physics-based, but it also uses the latest mathematical insights, which well, and that combination is resulted in a very fast and stable model that you can use to model a water system and see if you put in a certain pressure on it. For example, if a dike breaches or you have a lot of precipitation, what really happens to the system. So we already had this software, but yeah, this was really a software that is mostly used by water experts in the field, but it was not so accessible to policymakers, to other involved stakeholders in these issues. So within the IMPETUS project, we really wanted to create an online platform that really enables everybody really to use this model and to make a model for a certain area and do simulations, see what happens, and that's really like as a direct input for your for decisions that have to be made. Well, like, sorry, I go back really quickly to this slide, but as you can see, like, this is one of the visualizations that we made for the Netherlands. But this is really in 2D. It's a map that you see from above. So our first goal was to make this more interactive online. And the second one was also to make it a bit more visual for everybody. So not only do like a 2D map, but also develop like a digital twin in 3D. So it would be like a Google Earth image where you can also visualize your simulation, your flooding simulations. So I this was like really shortly what we do, and I just wanted to give you a very short, quick demonstration of our platform, because the live application is already up and running, and we're currently busy to develop the 3D components in it. So that I cannot show you yet, but this I can. So what you can basically do is, it's just a web browser. You can go to this site, 3DI Live, and I already put a model ready. Well, it takes a bit of time to start it up. Basically, you can just make a model of any area in the world, put it in this platform, and just run it. So for the example, I just took a random example. This is an area in South Africa, actually. We do projects all over the world, but so what you can see here is, I can just show you real quick. So we made a model for this area. And for this very short introduction, I will just focus a bit on this area. So what you see here is a small village, and this here is a river running next to it. So so this is already an existing model, of course, but what you can just do is you can, for example, put an inflow in the river. We say, okay, the discharge in this river is 20 cube per second, it can be anything. And then it's very easy. You just press play. And what you can already see is then, well, the river is starting to fill up. So this is just a simulation, a model simulation that is running real time while we're looking at it. Well, what you can see here, if there is this amount of discharge in the river, you will see here that it starts to overflow into the area. So you have different tools. I cannot go into everything, but for example, to make a cross section, here you can see, like, along the line, you can see, like, okay, here we can indeed see that the water is overflowing from this side and flowing into the city. And just real quick, what you can also do with this model is just you stop the simulation for a second, the model stops running, and we can say, okay, well, maybe we also want to see what happens if it rains. Let's just create another rainfall event. We press play again. And now there's not only a river discharge in the model, but also rain that is falling in this area. You can immediately see, like, 40 millimeters per hour is quite a lot of rain. So we can see that that also results in water on the streets. Well, so yeah, this is just a very quick example, but yeah, you can just use the model interactively, see what happens, and it's really easy to use. So you can use it in like sessions with policymakers, decision makers, just to get a really idea of what it would look like if you're talking about future climate scenarios. Well, and then you can also store the results. You can store different results and maybe do some analysis with it later. But yeah, really depends on what you want, of course. Yeah, so this is where we are right now. And yeah, now we're trying to develop the 3D component of this so that it will really even be more visually attractive and understandable for everybody. Yeah, so in a quick nutshell, this is what we're doing on flood risk from the IMPETUS project. Yeah, if you are interested, you can contact me anytime. I put my contact information on this slide, but yeah, you can also find us online. Yeah, if you're curious to find out more. So thank you.
Thank you, Martine. It was a really interesting presentation, and it seems like a very interesting tool.
Thank you.
I don't know if maybe you could share the link on the chat.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So maybe people can access it as soon as we finish the webinar. And now the last presentation from Teresa from Resilience.
Hi everyone, I'm Teresa Geidel and I'm representing one of the sister projects, another one called Resilience today. And I'll be super quick. I know it's been a lot of input already. I'll just quickly share as well and explain just a tiny bit on the topic that I've been working on in the past few months is about maladaptation. So Resilience is a project that focuses on vulnerable regions across Europe and helps them to find their ways to be more sustainable, more resilient basically, and find more resilient pathways. And one of the tasks in the work packages that I'm leading is on maladaptation. So this is when adaptation actions or projects that some of you might be working on are going wrong, so to say. I'll just skip through some slides to make it a bit shorter. This is the definition of maladaptation given by the IPCC. So if you're a person who's planning an adaptation action, very likely, of course, you are planning it in a positive way. You want to create positive change and react to a climate change effect. But there can be cases where your adaptation project or an adaptation project turns maladaptive. So there are some negative effects. This, for instance, in the second line could mean that the project that you're doing actually increases greenhouse gases, or perhaps it has a negative impact in another sector, not the one that your adaptation action is immediately placed in, but it has negative repercussions on another sector or social group, or perhaps at a much later point in time, it's realized that there have been quite a few negative impacts. So around this topic, there's quite a lot of research by now. I'll quickly share examples. Maybe we just look at one, maybe the last one that you see here in the table. So let's imagine that we are a community located at the coast, and we're planning on coastal rehabilitation of beach promenades, because in a lot of cases, I looked at some cases in France, at the west coast of France, so the Atlantic coast, the coastline and the sand is, so to say, being eaten up by the sea every year, bit by bit. But because the communities rely on tourism so much, they continue to build up and rebuild the promenades and all of the parts that are going along the coastlines. So every time that the storm eats some of the sand, every winter it's being rebuilt, which has massive repercussions actually for the people that live there. So it means that because so many rocks are being moved and the promenade is being rebuilt, that for 2 months, 1 to 2 months per year, every winter, everything is shaking, like at least in the sorry, I got distracted for a second, at least in the city that I spoke with. And also it's very, very expensive, and it's kind of a fight against the time, because this will continue to happen, and it might be better to have a more systematic change solution rather than just maintaining the status quo. So this is just one example of maladaptation, but it's important to note that it's really a spectrum, or not very black and white, that you can say, okay, this is a great adaptation action, this is a maladaptive one, but rather there will always be trade-offs and repercussions in most adaptation projects. And the way we think about it in our project and work is that it makes sense to look at the risks of maladaptation already in the planning phase. And for this, we developed a checklist that you can apply as a project if you are currently planning an adaptation project or you want to check one that you already did. And it's quite straightforward. I'll post the link in a second. So it's a free tool or checklist where you have 4 pages of questions that you go through, and you check basically if your adaptation action corresponds to all the different aspects that have a risk of maladaptation in them or not. So it's 1 page of guideline in the beginning and then 3 pages of questions. And it is structured along 5 different categories of risk. So this is what it looks like then if you actually use it, that you just check either yes or no, or partially actually, and then there's on the right-hand side some space for comments as well. So for each of the questions, this one, for example, is, have the risks of maladaptation of the adaptation action been discussed with relevant stakeholders? And then there's a little explanation text underneath and cursive writing. You might realize like, oh, we have discussed it with a lot of stakeholders, but not everyone. And then by checking partially and or no and making some comments on the side, it's your chance to go back and check if it makes sense to dig a bit deeper or modify the project a little bit if it's still possible. Just in the interest of time, I'll share the link both to this tool and then actually to another session that I give next Thursday, where a maladaptation case will be discussed in depth. And I'll hand back over for the Q&A. These are my contact details in case you're interested in assessing maladaptation in your project or know people that want to do this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you also for helping and closing it a little bit earlier. If there are any questions, please write them in the chat, and we will try to answer them now. Otherwise, we'll continue. We'll see if we can put you in contact with the speaker that interests you. Maybe in the meantime, I can just briefly summarize what has been discussed today and what we looked at. So first of all, we looked at the role of MEP for ADAPT and their assistance to adaptation projects and areas. Then we looked at the status and recent research in climate adaptation in Europe. We looked at the resilience index and how it was developed for the Galicia case study. And then for the Gulf of Oristano in Sardinia, we looked at the complexity of integrated governance and how they developed the coastal contracts and the observatory. And then finally, we had our 2 most recent presentations from our sister projects, where Martine discussed and showed us the tool that they developed, which got quite a bit of attention, I think. And then as well as the maladaptation tool, which I found extremely interesting and useful. With this, I think that's it. I don't see any questions. I know that the speakers already answered to some of the questions during the meeting. So if there isn't anything else, I think we can close off this session. We will have more webinars thanks to this network that we're developing with TransformAr, and we will reach you for the upcoming ones in the spring.